One of the best ways we can help someone who's living with dementia, or help ourselves following a diagnosis of dementia, is to take the time to learn what others are experiencing. I'm Leanna Shannon, and today we'll hear firsthand from people who have offered to share their personal experiences with us. We'll learn about what they went through when they were first diagnosed. We'll hear how they're managing day to day. Joining us are Yukola, Wayne, and Chris, who are each living with early stage dementia. Although everyone's experience can be different, I think we'll learn a lot that can help us in our own situations. If you think back to before your diagnosis, when did you first notice some changes in your memory?
This sounds really ridiculous, but the first time I noticed it, I was on a retreat with work in a car full of people, and I saw horses, and I said, "Look at everybody, look at the beautiful cows." And like it sounds, lots of people make those mistakes, but it really hit me. I thought about it after because everybody, of course, laughed. And I'm thinking, why would I even say that? I wasn't thinking cow. Wasn't even cow in my thoughts, you know. Then little stuff like that started to happen.
How did that make you feel?
At that time, it worried me enough that I remember, like, everybody just laughed, and it's, oh, we all do that, but I knew it was different. I just knew, and I remember not sleeping that night thinking about it, like, where did that come from? And the more that kind of thing happened, it made me feel stupid at times, embarrassed me at times, till I knew what was going on. It's a little easier now with the diagnosis, because there's a reason.
Sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Wayne? Did you?
Yeah, I was still working when I first noticed it, and you know, when you've worked in a work environment for a long period of time, when you have those shortcomings, the rest of your staff oftentimes will pick up for you, you know, and so it was covered up for a long period of time. I guess I put it down. Our son had passed away just, I think, about a year and a half before that. And I put it down to stress, you know. And then I went to see a doctor, and the doctor put it down to, oh, stress, you know, and stress on the job, and your son passed away. Must be psychological issues here, and so on and so forth. Sent me to a psychiatrist. And I think we played that game for, oh, I don't know how many years. And I think I became almost dysfunctional at work. I was in audit management, and you know, you'd get these spreadsheets every morning, and the numbers no longer made sense. I mean, I couldn't even remember what the numbers meant yesterday, much less I'm looking at them today, and I just couldn't figure that out. Yeah, it was a frightening experience.
How about you, Yukola? Do you have a story from when you first started to notice your memory changing?
I was giving a lecture at the university for a friend, and for the first time when I gave a lecture ever, people walked out of the room. So I knew there was something wrong. And so then I didn't say anything to anybody. I just thought, that was terrible. I must have done a terrible job. And then our son, I mean, I knew inside that I had something wrong, that I was forgetting. Excuse me. And then our son came over one morning and said, he sat there and hummed and hawed a while. With 4 sons, I think it was the oldest, no, it was second oldest. And he said, after hesitating for a while, he said, "Mom, do you think you're forgetting?" And I said, "Of course." So then it was out in the open, and my husband took me in. So we were to be tested, and our doctor said, "There's nothing wrong with you." But Dawn didn't stop there. We asked to see a specialist, and she said, "Yes, you have Alzheimer's."
Wow.
And that's the trouble when you present well. My doctor said the same thing, you know, and then it had to be stress because your father had just died, but I had had problems 6 months before my father died, but they just kept telling us stress, stress. And you know deep down there's something wrong.
Sure.
So how did you go about, what was the process of your getting a diagnosis? Can you walk us through that process?
Although our doctor didn't think I had Alzheimer's, Don insisted, my husband, and we went to a specialist. And of course, when I was diagnosed, and she said it was Alzheimer's, and so they started me on medication, and it made a huge difference.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it's made a huge difference since. I've been on medication for 5-6 years, somewhere in there.
What medications were prescribed to you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Something
Good
for
answer,
Alzheimer's.
Long words.
How about you? What was your process to get
It
diagnosed?
was different than a lot of people because I knew something was wrong. So I went myself to the doctor. And then, of course, they question the diagnosis of dementia because they say somebody else should be seeing that, like your daughter or your husband, you know. And so it was very frustrating because for a few years I'd go in and it was just, they wanted to put me on antidepressants, or they wanted, you're depressed, your father just died. And I said, but this was going on before my father died. And then again, the big question was, because I came in to say I needed help, there's something wrong. That didn't fit the bill for them. So then they basically, I don't think, believed me. And then finally did a PET scan, I believe it was called. And then he said, yes. He said, you've got a problem. He said, you've got different areas of the brain that are affected. And then when they did tell me, they called my daughters in because my husband wasn't there. Didn't tell me, they told them, had me go out the room and told them that I had frontal lobe dementia and that there was a good possibility that I'd go mute. And basically that was it. There was no referral. Come see us again in 6 months. But there was no referral or information about dementia or what it was. So thank God to computers and agencies like the Alzheimer's Society, because that was my job before I was a social worker, so I just got busy and looked everything up and contacted the Alzheimer's Society here and got involved with them, got all the information to educate myself. And then shortly after I was diagnosed, my mother had moved in with me because my dad died. And she was diagnosed after myself with Alzheimer's. So I ended up being her full-time caregiver as well as having the diagnosis myself.
How did it make you feel getting your memory tested?
It was like a maze, I think.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best way of putting it. Sometimes they were like Chris. There were no answers. I mean, like, the guy's got short-term memory loss. So, but like no one would put it together. Didn't really have anything until, my physician said, let's have a CAT scan, let's see exactly where I am now and see what happens here, and follow this up. And I had strokes. That was number one. And number two is it kind of looked like pixels in my brain. So from there it was on to medication, and here I am.
What advice would you give someone who was just starting that diagnosis process?
You have to really take a lot of the information that you receive from specialists with a grain of salt. if nothing else, that comes out of this film is that life goes on after dementia. You can live a really productive life.
And the other thing is we're younger, a younger generation, and I'm not sure that the doctors are even aware that younger people, I mean,
Yeah.
are getting it, because you walk in the door and because you're young, you're really questioned that it's not a psychological thing, or you're not depressed, and they keep pushing you on that. You have to go see a psychiatrist.
I didn't have those problems.
Yeah.
Our doctor really did not think I had Alzheimer's at first, just our GP. And he really doubted that I had Alzheimer's. But then Don asked him for a referral to a specialist, and we got in very quickly. He got me on medication, but I was much older than you were.
Yeah.
I was much older when this all started.
Do you have any advice for someone who's just starting that process?
Well, I think if you suspect, or your spouse suspects, or your friends, whoever you connect with, suspects, you need to listen, and you need to go to a doctor. And if our first doctor, although he didn't really think, he wasn't a specialist, so he really wasn't sure it was Alzheimer's. But I really do think that one should definitely pursue it until they get an answer they're satisfied with.